Hello, welcome everybody. Interesting topic. We already had this in Germany, and very, let's say, fancy discussions and insights from companies, how they deal with the introduction of AI in the workplace. What is the impact for HR? What is the impact for companies? Maybe funny side note up front, you maybe heard of it, that last week in Germany, the German parliament decided that certain parts of employment contracts can only be used with a wet ink signature. So maybe no use of DocuSign and so on, but to be questioned. But today we are looking a little bit, I don't want to say into the future, because what we are talking about is happening already now. We're looking at the age of industry 4.0, automation of certain things. And what we see in the companies when advising them, negotiating with works council and unions, that artificial intelligence and software and so on has a lot of impact already now. What kind of impact? We will have a look together with Peter Seeberg. He's an expert on AI and how to introduce systems. He will look at it from a technological side, and also will give us some background on current discussions going on the European Union on the AI laws, which will be introduced most probably next year. Then we will look at certain special topics like recruiting, like negotiating with works council and union, and what has to be considered. But maybe before we start the session with Peter, let's have a look at the speakers who is there. Next slide, please. These are my lovely colleagues from all over the world, or nearly all over the world. Søren from Denmark, Joe from Belgium, Roman from Spain, and Liat from Israel. And we had in the preparation session a lot of discussion. What is particularly going on? What challenges companies are facing when using or introducing AI? And I'm very happy that we have them on board. But maybe first, Peter, what is AI? Give us some background, please.
Happy to do so, Markus. Let me see that I can share my files with you. Let's see, where is that part? That has changed. That's the first thing. Let me see. Oh, there it is. And I choose this one. So if you can confirm that you can see these files now. Yoshibel, Markus, can you see my files? Oh, good. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, my name is Peter Seeberg. I was born in the Netherlands. I live in the Munich area. And I am an AI moderator consultant, and my goal in life the last 5 years, so to say 5 to 10 years, is to demystify artificial intelligence. I'm going to look at what is artificial intelligence, AI. We're going to look at some use cases. We're going to look at the impact of AI. The topic of bias, and that will bring us to trust and regulation, and then we'll move into the discussion. So the term AI exists since 1957. It was part of an invitation at that time to a group of technical explorers, so to say, for 3 months. And there was a hypothesis that would say that if we could define intelligence so precisely that maybe a machine would be able to simulate intelligence. Now we are 60 to 70 years further. Many things have happened. We have more than 60 or 70, maybe we have 700 or 7,000 definitions. So I can give you not the one and only definition. Instead, I will give you my definition, which I hope that if you in the next weeks or months are going to be dealing with AI, that you're going to recognize the main elements of what is AI. I say that AI is when an algorithm in the hands of a human finds patterns in data and makes seemingly intelligent proposals. Staying with the last part, only if there is some kind of aha effect in humans, that is when we would say, oh, what is this? What is going on? Was there a human involved, or a very intelligent person? It's about algorithms, and very important, in the hands of a human. Artificial intelligence is a tool and nothing but a tool that finds patterns in data. Humans can find patterns in data. We do that all day. Many of us use maybe Excel or Word, and we see certain patterns. For example, when we look at different workers in our companies, we can do that. The difference is that humans can find patterns in maybe 10 or 100 lines and columns. Algorithms can do the same thing if it's 1 million lines or 1 million columns. And that's why algorithms are typically better at finding patterns. What is AI not? AI is not when humanoid robots hijack humans, and bring us under their control. Like in the wonderful, amazing movie 2001, The Space Odyssey. Do you believe it's already 30, 50, 60 years old? If you haven't seen it, go and have a look. Blade Runner, iRobot, there's many, many more of these movies. They all have this topic. Now, the little bit of a problem is that for that reason, 90+% of the consumers believe that that is what AI is. And for that reason, are kind of afraid of what AI is. I can tell you, we do not have to be afraid of AI. AI cannot stand up by itself. AI is a tool. We humans control what it is that we want to do with the algorithms, and that is what we discussed today. Having said that, AI is a dual-use technology. So we can have it do good or bad. We cannot say AI is good or bad. Now, we humans, we use it as a tool, and we can really compare it with nuclear technology. A topic, again, very hot at the moment in Germany. Should we keep the final nuclear plants going or not going? AI is at that same critical infrastructure level. I would say it's a lot more powerful, even in a positive and a negative potential sense, than nuclear technology. Use cases are already today all around us, at work, at home, when we go to the doctors, in the production environment, when we travel. They are everywhere, and there's going to be more and more every day. Now, one thing when we talk about the impact is this is not necessarily my thought, but I would at least agree. I would say that repeatable activities, they will be automated by AI in the next 5 to 10 years. They have already started to become automated with many of you listeners already in the last couple of years. Now, that means that intelligent robots, softbots in the work environment, they will be doing the heavy and the tedious, the boring work, let's put it like that. And we humans will more often be working in jobs that require more creativity and also empathy, which is what we cannot expect, at least not the empathy from the algorithms. I would say that all jobs will change as we are here together. You listeners, we the organizers, my fellow lawyers, I would say all jobs will change, or at least 99%. Some a little, some a lot. Some jobs will even disappear. But on the other hand, new jobs will see the light. And where the net result is going to be, we only know in 5 or 10 years when we look back. Nobody can know exactly. What is different this time, in the production area where I'm from more, is there is this fourth industrial revolution. And what is different this time is that in the first 3 industrial revolutions, it was always the low-skilled people whose job was changing. Now this time, also the skilled workers and the academics are affected. That's the big difference. So the best example almost is that since a couple of years, algorithms have started recognizing specific medical situations more accurately than radiologists. Now, does it mean that radiologists lose their job? No. Does it mean their job changes? Yes, most certainly. You know, if I can leave 50%, 60, 70, 80% of whatever it is that I'm looking at, and the algorithm says negative, negative, then I can concentrate my job on the positive ones, positive, which in the medical area is what you do not want to have. Now, the same way, let's look at translations. You know, until 5-10 years ago, we had 9 words very good. And then the 10th word was, oh, you thought, oh, that's never going to work. And then suddenly AI came in. And now sometimes you believe, oh, how is this possible? Was this a job of a human being? So many translators have changed their job. Others have gone into niche markets. Relates to the comment by Markus at the beginning, where, you know, the market is not yet expecting, they want a human to do the job. But should these people be looking at changing their job? I believe so. They should before the algorithm is going to take over. Now, one example in workers management, you know, most of you know and have heard, and we'll talk about it later on, applicant pre-selection. Can algorithms do that? Yes, they can. Should they? Does it mean that HR employees will lose their job? Not necessarily, but maybe you want to consider using algorithms, using AI, and there's a lot of considerations that we'll talk about today. So then we come into a potential problem with AI. So if we say AI is about algorithms finding patterns in data, data typically contains bias, at least as long as it is related to human beings. When it's in production and there's only machines, that's not a big topic. But if the data is biased, then the AI, the algorithms, they will find biased patterns. And bias resides everywhere in medical data, translations, HR. It's almost all the time. It's very difficult to find data that is not biased. And for which reason the EU wants to have their citizens to only interact with what they call trustworthy AI. And that means the AI systems soon are going to have to comply with laws, regulations, the ones that we talk about today, will have to abide by ethical guidelines, and they will need to be socially and technically robust. So in the meantime, there is an upcoming EU AI Act that we talk about, and they follow a risk-based approach, which will allow and make sure that systems will become certified. There's low risk use cases, you know, a spam filter most of us use in our email program. That's no problem. Anybody can use that. In the middle is a high risk, like, for example, workers management that we talk about today. And there's things that are being considered unacceptable with maybe exceptions, like video surveillance. So of the high risk systems, the AI system providers are gonna need to oblige by number one, a risk management system. They're gonna need to make sure they have high quality data sets, and they're gonna need to allow for human oversight. And there's a couple of other elements related to these systems when the AI Act is gonna become approved and installed in Europe. So to bring it together as a close, and maybe we're going to use this definition by me later on when we discuss what AI is. It's about algorithms. They are a tool in the hands of a human. They find patterns in data, and they make seemingly intelligent proposals. So it's a tool in the hands of a human, and that can be a production controller, a doctor, a lawyer, a judge, any of the 1,500 other jobs that I looked, and we have at least in Germany, so including an HR professional. Thank you very much for the opportunity and looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Maybe interesting side note, all of you, of the participants, may use certain well-known systems like SAP, Workday, Salesforce. And when you look into the current draft of the AI Act or Planned AI Act, there is an attachment to which systems are critical or not critical. And at least current status is that the well-known HR systems like Workday and so on might be critical. So you will have more need to justify how and when you use it from a data protection perspective. And when you have employee representatives like in Germany, works councils, then also you might have more need to justify why you want to use the systems and how you want to use them. But before we come to the specific topics, maybe question to the country, starting with Israel. Do you have any specific laws on AI? What is allowed, what is not allowed? Because my recognition of Israel is that a lot of is allowed. You are a very, very modern country with a lot of development and technology. So how is it from a law perspective?
Yeah, you are correct. I mean, Israel is considered as a startup nation from the technology aspect, but from the legal aspect, we have no AI specific legislation at all. And the law is behind the technology. However, we have proactive court ruling, and you will see that it impacts the actual legal regime.
And in Spain, Roman, I know you have a lot of, let's say, from your private side to do with AI technology, as far as I remember correctly. So how's the law in Spain?
Well, Markus, the law in Spain is already a law. There is regulation based on artificial intelligence in place, which started with the litigation about platform work and the classification of mostly writers rendering services. And there's already a law which says that the activity of individuals who provide services consistent in the delivery or distribution of goods and merchandise by means of algorithmic management of the service or working conditions through a digital platform, they must inform about the terms of the algorithm. And that has become a law for all possible employers, saying that, and there is a new obligation in our main employment law, saying that any company with a works council, that is when there are work locations with more than 50 employees, they must inform the representatives of the employees about the parameters, rules, and instructions on which the algorithm or AI systems are based and which affect the decision-making impacting working conditions, access, and maintenance of employment, including profiling, which it's quite avant-garde in a way, and it shows a suspicion that those AI systems might be biased or might be in infringement of basically fundamental rights or other regulations. So we have already regulations in force.
Okay, we have maybe one sentence regarding Germany, because in last year a modernization act regarding works council was introduced. In fact, they have not become modern through that act, but we have also a rule that has been introduced regarding artificial intelligence, what more or less means that especially works councils are allowed to use external experts regarding AI systems to understand this. Yeah. And what we see on the ground when working with companies, this just opens a big field for good guys, for bad guys, when you want to introduce AI. What is the situation in Belgium?
Well, in Belgium, unfortunately, we're not that avant-garde. We have no specific law for the moment on artificial intelligence. So we are really looking forward to the regulations on the European level with the proposal of the Commission on Artificial Intelligence and Machinery Product, and then the Directive of Working Conditions for Platform Workers. Because everything I will be saying is today will be based on all the collective labor agreements that are dating back already from some years. So we're really waiting on these developments.
Okay. Denmark is also kind of startup country, at least in Copenhagen. What is the situation there?
Well, the situation here in Denmark is that we don't have any specific regulation concerning AI to what employers should be aware of, and what will reflect answers from me later on in this session is that employers with a collective bargaining agreement might face a risk that using AI in certain situations is deemed a so-called control measure. And in generally speaking, a control measure, if you have a collective bargaining agreement, needs to be implemented with a certain notice, using a certain procedure. Otherwise, employers risk a very substantial fine from the labor court.
Okay, this was the overview. Very, very interesting. Regarding specific topics, and we would like to start with recruiting. Peter already mentioned the risks of bias when you use recruiting tools. Everybody from you might know the Amazon example, where they built a recruiting machine in inverted commas, which just scanned CVs from applicants and just try to do a kind of pre-selection process. And unfortunately, the system needed to be stopped because there was a discrimination of female applicants, and because the machine was learned with data from mainly male applicants. And then, let's say, very, very strange structures were built in the AI systems. And this is also from a legal perspective, one particular topic to be considered. Do you have an anti-discrimination code, also in inverted commas? Is anti-discrimination considered when you use recruiting systems? In Germany, you have the German Equal Treatment Act. There are certain criteria why you are not allowed to discriminate certain groups. But Peter, when we go away from law, what is theoretically and maybe also practically possible from an AI perspective? Can AI technology do during recruiting process?
Yes, well, let's stay with the example, and the reason what happened, and everybody has heard about the Amazon disaster, I would say. So so you train the algorithm and you say, here is the data, and at that time, I think it's about 5 years back, the majority of workers at whatever that was white male. And then, so let's go back to the definition. AI is about an algorithm finding patterns. And the pattern is, whatever white male write in their application, right? So then they use it to do the pre-application. And then there's women applying for the job. And as long as, they have specific other elements in their application, the algorithm doesn't recognize it, right? So that was the problem. So they would just not be chosen because the algorithm had only been trained, as you said, on white male. So algorithms can do this. Now, I am not sure if you can really put into place a system, let's say, and it doesn't really matter if you're then doing the pre-application in Germany, in France, so in Europe or elsewhere, as long as we humans, are aware that at least from the way that we look as humans, but we can assume that also, a person from China, a person now coming in from Ukraine, from wherever, that they write applications in a different way, they will not from the beginning be recognized. So you should normally always, when you want to do a thing like this, you need to make sure that your data is representing the audience against which later on you want to use the AI system. Now, can you make sure that, if let's say you don't have your system trained on a person from Ukraine and for whatever reason they do this in a different way and things happen in the world and suddenly there's a person from Ukraine that will not come in. So let me stop there just to share with you that that situation.
This is I would understand the dirty data risk which you might have if you don't train the machine properly with proper data. Then you might also cause legal problems, like in Germany, especially risk of liability, according to the General Equal Treatment Act, AGG. And then, of course, data protection laws kick in. What is not allowed, according to, I think, also European law, but definitely German laws, that you have a kind of automatic selection process. So that only the machine decides who needs to, or who will be hired, or who will be just not considered for the further application process. And we have a lot of other data protection rules which need to be considered when you already consider to introduce AI-based system, train AI-based system, and then use of AI-based system. And what we see, what is let's say also in connection with works councils, very hard, that you have to show and need to explain certain algorithms why and how certain data is processed. And especially when you look at certain new models coming on the surface, where employees can also ask the employer about how and which data is processed, and you need to answer in very tight deadlines, then what we see are certain, let's say, at least administration, but also legal risks coming up front to companies, and because it will be very hard to explain how the black box AI is working, what kind of systems are processing data. And I don't know, do you have in other countries comparable problems or specific problems, or can you use AI for recruiting, Israel?
Yeah, we share the same issues. When I thought about the recruitment phase and using AI tech for the recruitment, as I said, there's no specific law in Israel, but I think that I basically can identify 4 challenges. Some of them you've already mentioned, and some I think new challenges. So we do have the equal opportunity challenge, the fact that the HR may target certain population, and in Israel we have progressive equal opportunity legislation. And on top of that, if the HR tech favor a certain group, or ask certain questions which may give rise to potential discrimination, then it's also important to know that the burden of proof transferred to the employer to demonstrate that he didn't discriminate. So it also changed the burden of proof, which can be substantial. We do share the privacy aspect, whether the HR tech in itself meets privacy constraints. For example, I had previously a startup company who skinned through the social media of candidates and then gave a profile to the employer for recruitment purposes. And I told them that in Israel, it would be very problematic. And later on, they targeted the US market rather than the local market because of privacy reasons. But I think that 2 additional challenges on top of the equality of the privacy is first the fact that in Israel, employer in general needs to exercise its own discretion. So you can be assisted with AI, but at the end, your discretion is independent and you should exercise it. So you can be assisted by an AI or by the way, by even conservative, suitability tests, but they all needs to meet they need to be reliable, they need to be valid. So, it takes time for any device, even interviews, whatever done by recruitment agencies, they need to be valid, they need to be reliable. So this is, I think it's an important issue. And another aspect, which I believe may be relevant to other jurisdictions as well, is the fact that many times employer needs to provide information and reasoning. For example, if a candidate wasn't accepted because of a certain thing, he may ask, why wasn't I expected? And I need to provide him a valid answer, not just way, you know, the AI device said that you are not suitable for the role. It may not be sufficient. And for me to be able, for the employer to be able to give explanation, he may need something else out or additional thing. And I think those 4 challenges are substantial. I just want to add that they are less substantial during the recruitment stage, and they are more substantial during the employment, because when I recruit someone, I may not have additional information on him. When we are talking about existing employees, we have a different, you know, a consideration to take into account, but I guess we'll talk about them later on.
Yeah, indeed. Comparable problems also in Germany. The background checks are very, very limited, at least when you do it only run by machines. Spain, how is the situation?
It is quite similar. There is a mistrust that using just artificial intelligence for recruiting could have inbuilt bias or could leave out something which eventually will confirm a discrimination which cannot be justified by just having left it to a machine or to a programming. Our data protection agency has already intervened in this issue and has said that algorithm or AI systems may assist companies to screen and filter candidates, future employees, but should not be solely considered to take employment decisions. And the second constraint regulated by the data protection agency is that individuals cannot be discriminated as a result of decisions solely based on algorithms or AI systems. So at the end, it's very similar to what happens in Israel. I think in Germany, it says, yes, you can use it, but that's not an excuse, or that in itself does not justify your final decision. You still have to intervene and make sure that the decision has not an inbuilt bias, or somehow it will not justify your decision if in the end turns out to be discriminatory.
Before we come to Belgium, maybe one question to Peter. Do you think that machines can do better decisions than humans?
That's a philosophical question, Markus. What is better? If it's more objective, is that better? I mean, it's a question I should be asking, you know, the people who are listening in, the HR managers, the workers managers, I guess. I read today somewhere that, you know, consumers, so potential candidates, don't like this because they like the idea of a human being, you know, also making decisions from a perspective of human values. So it really is philosophical, and it goes so far that I would say that although we're trying to do the right thing in Europe, you know, we are Europeans, we're proud Europeans, but also we need to be careful that we're not moving into a system, into, let's say, an Orwellian 1984 kind of situation where humans will be monitored by algorithms to do the right thing or not the right thing. You know, we were raised as humans with certain bias, if our parents wanted that or not, but that is typically the case. And now systems, AI systems, are not allowed to have bias, and I don't say that that is not good. But you hear me say it's a very philosophical question that we together, as you know, as humans, as people, maybe politically, need to decide the direction that we want to go.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, Belgium, what is allowed during recruiting?
Well, we recently attended a seminar from the Belgium Data Protection Authority where the spokesperson said that robot recruitment would be possible for them. Although you have to make sure that you have a right to human intervention and the right to challenge the decision. So that was an unofficial position of that person, but it was clear that it would be possible. And if we look at robot recruitment, there is a collective bargaining agreement dating back to 1983. And there we find some elements that could be important for artificial intelligence, that it already speaks about equal treatment. It also states that if there are any costs involved in the process, that's on the employer side, you need to respect the candidate's private life. But what interesting is there's duration. They say the recruitment process must be within a reasonable time frame. So if you have to recruit a large amount of candidates, then using AI could be something to help you get into within that reasonable time frame.
Okay, I guess in Belgium also what I read, a law was introduced that you have a claim to go on a 4-day week, right? That you can claim work on
that's
Friday.
That's not really already a law now. It's still before Parliament.
Okay, because
so the 4-day work week is not officially.
Okay, because I thought there was a connection that they want when they ask the people in HR to go on a 4-day week, they also have to allow artificial intelligence to choose people, so you can limit also the workload from HR. Yeah,
because that will be interesting to limit that workload.
Denmark.
Well, from a Danish perspective, it's more or less the same. The good thing is there's no collective bargaining problem here because it's not considered a control measure. And that leaves you with the GDPR, which is more or less the same than Germany, Spain, Belgium, where we can use it for pre-selection, pre-screening, but there needs to be some kind of human involvement. Generally speaking, it is our impression that employers are somewhat reluctant to use it in the recruitment process, unless it's for really broad screening of the candidates, which as long as you are aware of the rules in the GDPR is legal in Denmark.
Okay. Now, next topic, from recruiting to what happens during an employment relationship. We called it on our slides and during the preparation a kind of AI boss. Can AI give work instructions to people, and how this needs to be monitored? And you may say, well, it's completely future, it's completely 1984, but it happens. Yeah, when you look at certain what was said in Spain on platform business, how people just get their work orders, deliver food, deliver other goods from A to B, from restaurant to customers. It's already there that people are asked by technology, by algorithms, to do certain things. And the question is, do you need to limit it, and how to limit it? And also from a psychological point of view, when you consider people just taking instructions from machines, it's not that far away, at least from a certain perspective, that we are heading towards a 1984 George Orwell scenario. But maybe Peter, what is possible from technology perspective?
It's interesting, Markus, that you make the division between, because I was thinking more of my my boss as an independent consultant. I do not have directly a boss rather than my spouse. But it's very interesting how you say, sure, I mean, the people who take the delivery orders, let's stay with that example, sure, it's a system, it's an AI, doesn't have to be AI algorithm-based system who gives the order and I look on my screen and I do things. We see all around us more and more the logistics people at the end of the chain, coming to us with their packages, and maybe we sign or we click or we do something. So that is all possible, and as you said, we need to decide as a European community what it is that we want and how far we need to go. So in the end, what I really like so far is that I've heard a couple of times that also from a legal perspective, it is not in most cases allowed that only algorithmic systems, so they can be AI systems or normal rule-based systems, that they can never be allowed to be the sole decision point. That is, I like that, because that is supporting what I say. This is a tool. It's nothing more than a tool, and we can use it where we think it is good. And where is the limit? I think we as a community need to stay close to that, and we need to see where, you know, maybe people all day interacting with a machine, with a screen, rather than with humans. You know, those people may turn up at doctors, you know, at psychologists, because we are human. So that is, maybe that is showing the border. Yes, many things are possible, and we decide by ourselves politically what we want.
Yeah, indeed, and maybe also from the health perspective, what you have in Germany, it's allowed that you have a, let's say, an app or an algorithm to have as a kind of boss, and giving you, let's say, day-to-day instructions how to do. And I think, and what we see also in companies, it happens. Yeah, when you look only at maintenance of machines, yeah, when somebody just gets a call because a machine is not working and the field service guy needs to travel there to fix the machine. It's happening already now, but from an health perspective, what we see, that you have the obligation of employers to do certain health risks assessments, and these are considered as completely new risks which need to be taken into account by companies, and how you deal with it, how you can mitigate those risks. How is it in Israel? Are you allowed to have an app on robot, on algorithm to be a boss?
Yeah, generally you can provide instruction through AI and sort of that apps, robots, whatever we call them. But one must remember that two things. First, the instruction themselves need to meet all laws. Of course, the instruction needs to meet equality law, privacy laws, and other law. And at the end of the road, even if a robot share the instruction, the employer have, you know, made the software or whatever is responsible. So the responsibility over the instruction remains with the employer at the end. So you can't say, you know, the robot said that or the robot said that. You have to basically take the responsibility. Another thing that I wanted to say, you know, we are all dealing with HR, and HR is culture, and it's people. And at the end of the road, Israel is a very warm, communicative, informal, sorry to say, society. There could be certain, you know, AI instructions like, you know, industry-based, put your helmet or stuff like that. But other than that, I don't think that it would be well perceived in many aspects of giving instruction if it's not a human communication, culture-wise.
Spain, also very warm culture.
It is, well, yes, that's what they say. And I think we are. But as in Israel, it's very much the same thing. It's legally possible. And the reason for that is the law says that the employee has to obey the orders of the employer, and the employer is normally a legal person. And obviously, most orders are not given by the legal person itself, by its representatives. It's other employees who are given the power to do so, and it can be delegated. So it can also be delegated to a machine or to a system. That's legally possible. However, and very similar to what Liat was saying, the final responsibility will remain on the company. And if those orders create a damage, it will not be a justification, the fact that it has been given to an artificial AI system, but the employer will remain liable. So it's recommendable to keep an eye on it and to check what's going on.
What also brings a new aspect in this, because when you say, and it's the same, I guess, in every country, that every system, every algorithms need to take care of the legal rules. And then what you need, and this will be the particular challenge for HR in the next years to come, and already now, how you just train your IT and coding stuff, how they just code the rules into the system.
That's very interesting. And if I may add something, Markus, I think the big data is very important here, because at the end, what these systems are, they are trained by imitating humans. So here comes again, and that's for Peter, a very philosophical question. I mean, humans tend to repeat after experience, but eventually we have to take decisions kind of on new circumstances. And that's where I find very problematic. When you are repeating what is clear cases in which it applies to repeat what has happened before, like in driving, you know, you drive for many hours and repeat, but when something new comes up, that's when I think it's more complicated.
I guess Belgium and Denmark, comparable situation, right?
Yes, comparable situations. The only thing I could find as a little bit different point of view is that the National Social Security Office in 2012 issued a point of view where they said that an employer's authority cannot be delegated to a self-employed person from outside the company. And we are wondering whether they would go as far as saying like, oh, and you can't do it to an AI system. But we believe that is debatable and that an AI system can give orders because legal entities can give orders. So.
Yeah, and it's comparable in Denmark. And the one thing I can add is that generally in Denmark, you have very, very broad managerial rights as a company. And this would be one of them, delegating to AI. And just like in Israel and the other countries, obviously, management still is responsible for AI acting in a reasonable, non-biased manner. But having said that, it is becoming increasingly more common in Denmark that especially amongst non-qualified workers, they can be instructed by AI.
Yeah. Comparable topic, we called it during preparation, people analytics, employee control, predictive policing, and termination. We will not discuss every topic on this, but just let's say what needs to be considered. And when you only look, for example, on your bonus systems, I think it's easier to implement systems, bonus systems, LTI, STI schemes, which can be machine controlled through smart contracts or whatsoever, taking the decision what the people or how much the people get as a bonus. From a technology point of view, it would be definitely possible. In Germany, of course, you again need to take care of data protection aspects. And when you need to negotiate things with Works Council, then you need to be in the position to explain. But Peter, you ever heard from something like that machine algorithms decide what the people get?
Well, as long as you make sure that, and I can share with the fact that I spent with Intel microprocessor company, and I recall, and that's 25 years ago, but that all objectives there with that company had to be measurable. And if that is the case, you not only to say we need to sell XYZ, you need to improve your behavior by XYZ, and then the manager will say yes or no. So if you have already like a measurable environment, and maybe this technology company was already way ahead, then you can do that. And the AI comes in only because at the beginning, any of us can do that. We have an Excel, and there's human beings, and we do a note, and of course, then you can write, a certain algorithm, and it's all completely automated. The AI, I would say, comes in when you say, and let me compare, when at that company, it was about, finding who was the person in a group of people, and managers will sit in a room for one day, and they were only allowed to come out if they had the people that they were rating from 1 to 50 or whatever. And if you would leave that to a system, a rules-based system could not do that. AI could find the patterns and linked him to the people that you have said, this is a person where there's an action required, this is a high performer, and yes, the AI system would recognize that. Now, and then consider that, the group of managers would not need to spend a complete day in the room, because they could start with the AI-based, listing, and then maybe after an hour, they all agree, So, and the same thing, AI is the tool, and the managers then agree on. So that's what I could very well imagine, as long as you, the lawyers, agree that that is allowed to be done.
Yeah. Maybe before we get the country views, and just you can take this further. You can take this also for termination decisions. Yeah, and we know systems. We use it also as a law firm when you need to dismiss people, and especially during redundancies, you need to take care of social selection. And social selection can be maybe not AI, but you can do certain workflows, you can do certain rule-based decisions from a technological point of view, where the machine, the computer, the app just tells you, well, these are the right people to pick. It's not a magic, it's not something what is forbidden, but it's possible already now. What would be not possible in Germany, at least, that the machine just issues a termination notice. That they say, hey, I've just had a look in inverted commas at the list of low performers, and I send them already a letter that they don't have to come back to work because they're low performers. That would not be, at least status now, in Germany. How is it in Israel? What is possible regarding the measurement of performance of people?
Okay, you assuming that the AI tech, whatever device is used, meets, you know, the privacy and quality thresholds, and meeting privacy threshold is not so easy because there's Israeli highly regards privacy, and you need to sometimes obtain specific consent, knowledgeable consent about exactly what this, you know, device, which information it gets, and for whatever purpose. But assuming we meet those thresholds, you can be assisted with it, but again, the decision is of the employer. And because we are talking about specific employees that you know and that you have experience with, and that you know their behavior and their performance, the fact that certain AI told you something which may not be accurate, or which may give you the different impression of what you have yourself realized, then you have to put a greater weight on what you have field and not what the AI predicts. And specifically with regard to termination, as I shortly mentioned before, in Israel, we have a very proactive court system, and we have a termination procedure by court rulings, not by statute. And there's a specific process of a hearing in which you have to provide information, and a lot of information, and the employee has a right to share his views, and then you have to provide your decision after you have considered everything and give the reasoning. So you have to provide all this information. So it must be a more, let's say, wide and extensive than just say the AI. And of course, no one would accept you know, an AI sending a termination letter and saying goodbye to anyone. This would not be acceptable at all. And I just wanted to mention, because we have it a predictive policing, and I think maybe just in a line, because I think it's very interesting. Obviously, we don't have judgments and legislation about predictive AI, but I did find a very interesting court ruling, which is AI in a certain way. I saw a case of a driver who was actually terminated because there was a lot of car accidents, many car accidents in the system, and then they did some kind of a test of an interview, and all of them answered questions, and then he was found to have high probability of being involved in a car accident, and that's why he was terminated. And then the court said the termination is unjustified because, well, he's employed for 10 years and he didn't have a car accident. So, well, the prediction said that he would have because he did this and that, and he answered, but he didn't have. So at the end of the road, this is based on your performance, the behavior and things like that. And you can be assisted by it, but not be, you know, overwhelmed by it or count solely on it. So I think this is a good example of the situation.
Okay. Spain, how is it in Spain? Are you allowed to do a kind of predictive termination?
You are, and actually, there is one termination clause in Spain which is used in fact in most terminations, but companies do not even dare to try to justify it, which is unjustified diminution in the working performance. That is when an employee, which is relatively common, the employer says this person is working worse, is doing worse with his time or with her time, her performance is decreasing. And that's very difficult to prove because normally you have to compare with the previous performance of the same employee and with the performance of another comparable employee during the same period. Now, with AI, that can change dramatically because now it's much easier to really check what's happening, what's the performance, and to provide good evidence. However, our law says that first, if AI is to be used, in order to do so, the employees' representatives must be informed. And if it's going to be used not only to inform, not only to gain information, but to make decisions, then the employees' representatives have a more active duty, and they can report, and they can assess, and they can issue a report. But the thing is that this could change things dramatically in order to show when a termination is justified.
Yeah, okay. Interesting aspect, and I would like to skip, and I hope the guys are not too sad about here Belgium and Denmark on this, because two interesting topics left, and also around about 10 minutes. One is, and as Roman said, when you introduce certain things, do you need to take care of employee representatives, either unions, works councils, or what kind of employee representatives you might have in your country? Maybe two sentences regarding Germany. Yes, when you at least already when you introduce software in Germany, you need to negotiate with a works council if it's established. And the negotiations, what we see, are becoming harder and harder and more complicated, because the systems are becoming more complicated. And when it comes to AI, apart from data protection rules, you also need to take care of how you explain those systems to employee representatives. How is it in other countries? Israel, do you have union involvement regarding AI?
Yeah, first, we don't have, I mean, we do have collective relations and unions, but much less common than in European countries. So most of the private sector IT company, for example, do not have a union. But if there is a union, there's no specific obligation to consult with regard to AI or with regard to technology. You have to check which technology, which AI, and whether it impacts the workplace, whether it impacts the entitlements, and then whether there's consultation or merely notification or nothing based on the technology, nothing automatic.
Okay. Belgium, very interesting regarding unions and strike actions. Is AI allowed to strike in Belgium?
Oh, sorry, AI perhaps, but there are no co-determination rights in Belgium. So if you want to introduce new technology, you need to make information and consultation to the Works Council. So that is a little bit the limitation you have. So you have to follow a quite elaborative procedure, but it's possible.
Denmark, do you need to talk to Works Councils?
Generally speaking, no, you do not need to consult unless, again, you have a collective bargaining agreement, in which case you'll need to consult if it's a so-called control measure. So if it's something controlling, monitoring the employees, you most likely have to consult. The good thing about if you are within a collective bargaining agreement and you do consult is that then you have, for processing whether or not you're allowed to under the GDPR, you have a national rule in Denmark under the national Danish Act of data protection, saying that if it follows from a collective bargaining agreement, which a control measure will, then you have a right to process the data. Mm-hmm. So then you are, on the one side, if you have a collective bargaining agreement, you need to consult. On the other side, as long as what you do is reasonable from a collective standpoint, collective employment law standpoint, then you have the right to do it under the GDPR. So yes, you have to consult, but there is another benefit to it, is that you can process the data.
Okay. And maybe now, for the last couple of minutes, a view into the future, and let's talk about the upcoming AI Act on European Union. It was introduced in April 2021. And I think 2 weeks ago, the discussion was reopened. And what I saw the discussion is about, it's about a key of AI, namely the how to define AI, what is AI and how you regulate it. And we need to expect, as everything on European Union might take at least some months, maybe years, until the act is finalized. But at least from a German perspective point of view, when you look into the act, it will cause a lot of administrative efforts. You have certain information rights in there, you have certain audit processes to take, and you need to just monitor the systems you are using and you want to use. Maybe Peter, what do you expect when you think it's ready, and what has to be expected by company?
Ooh, I don't know when it's going to be available. A couple of months, end of the year, maybe, I guess. I think it's very important. If I may repeat that I told you at the beginning that we should really compare AI to, let's say, nuclear power. And I would say it's a lot more powerful in a positive and negative side than nuclear power. Now, any car that we see on the road, and I believe that is the same for any country in Europe, same in Israel, we know implicitly that that car has, when it was introduced into the country, has been approved by certain organizations. Every second year where I live, we go back and we have a certification. So they are only cars. Sure, cars can be dangerous. Artificial intelligence can be doing so many good things for us, for climate, for many things at a huge level, but can really do really bad things. So yes, we need a system by which you're going to recognize, whatever it's going to say. I work for Intel Inside, call it AI Inside or Trusted. And then the consumer is going to then see, okay, this system has been certified. I can now use it if I want to. So from that perspective, I think it's very important that we're going to have it, and that we as Europeans are going to make the first step on a global level, and that others, be they American, Chinese, wherever they're from, maybe are going to, follow us. And I think that's a very important thing to do.
The other guys, Israel, you're not in the EU, but will you have something comparable? Will you also adopt those rules when they are in the EU? What do you think?
No, I mean, we currently, yes, we are not part of Europe. At least we're trying to be in football and in the Eurovision, but not otherwise in the meantime. So there's no plans as far as I know, but all the startups and all the technology companies that prepare and develop the software will need to abide by all legislation and all rules in order to be able to operate in the European market. But other than that, nothing to date.
Spain, are you looking forward to this new laws, or you say?
I think so. I think so, because actually within the next few months, we will have what's called the Spanish Agency for the Supervision of AI. It's going to be created with the intention to investigate dangers that may arise from algorithms, monitor and minimize the risks. It says the law, there's significant risk for this technology may cause in terms of health and safety, audit AI platforms and algorithmic systems used in Spain in a transparent, objective, and impartial manner, even more so when the imperfections of AI systems have shown that they are capable of amplifying race, gender, and or social class discrimination against part of society. That's the intention of the regulator. We know it's going to happen, and that's certainly in relation with this intention which could be, as Peter said, an example for some of the parts of the world of regulatory intention. So yes, I think that's being considered. One thing I wanted to add also, because I think it's interesting, is that our authorities are already using artificial intelligence to regulate. There is a system called MAX, which is going to be used by the Labour Inspection within the next few months. It's going to begin in order to monitor conditions such as working time. So yes, I think Spain is intends to be aligned with these new regulations, certainly.
Okay, Denmark, are you also planning something comparable?
No, there's nothing being planned in Denmark, and the proposed regulation would be very different from what is the norm in Denmark, because we have those very broad managerial rights. So the consultation procedure will be at least by the employers, considered an infringement of that right, and which is why we are very, I wouldn't say excited, but we are waiting to see what will be in the final proposal.
Okay. Belgium?
Well, Markus, I looked up the average time for a Commission proposal to be adopted in first reading, and it's 18 months in the last legislative term. So we still have some time before we can have final text, but it's not that long.
Okay. I just read here during our internal chat, we have no time for Q&As. Well, but feel free to shoot afterwards via email. Thank you all for your time. I hope it was helpful. You got some interesting insights and considerations what you need to take care of internationally when you're operating with an AI systems and already software, because AI is at the end only in inverted commas software, and what needs to be taken into account and what needs to be considered. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.